Welcome everyone. This is Coaching in Session. My name is Michael Rearden and I will be your mindset coach today. And today we're going to be talking about expectations. Now, expectations are something that we might see as, well, what are my expectations in the world, right? For example, you have to have the latest and the greatest smartphone. That's an expectation. You have to drive a really nice car. It's an expectation of society. We have to have so many different expectations of what the world wants for us. But then we have to ask, well, is that what only is expectation? Now, expectation has a different meaning. We can have expectations when we're in school, for example, or when we're in work, or where we are anywhere, right? Relationships, there's an expectation there. We're going to be breaking down a couple areas of expectation and then understanding how you can set some expectations in your life. Because sometimes people just kind of walk through life with no expectations, and then they're upset that they don't get the results that they're looking for, or that the people around them are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So it's not that it's our way or the highway. It's just that we know our worth. It's just that we know our worth well enough that we're not going to allow someone to trample over our expectations because they're unaware of them. So let's start to look at some of the examples of expectations. And then from there, let's start to break it down and how you can implement them into your life. As always, if you're new to the channel, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and to share the video and or audio to help build a like-minded audience of growth-minded individuals. So today we're going to be looking at expectations, as I said, and we're going to be breaking it down into 3 areas. So the first one is going to be social. The second one is going to be how we learn the system growing up, and then how we should set the system now that we're adults. Society is going to tell us what we need to be. Society is going to say, hey, you need to have this, you need to do this. We have a list of 10 things right here that are going to be showing us, well, what society wants. One of the things that society says is that you have to have a bunch of friends. If you don't have a bunch of friends, you are weird and you're a recluse and no one likes you. So we are judged by the quantity of our friends. That's why if you are my age, we had MySpace growing up. We had, our friend count right there, front and center. And then we had our top 4 or top 8 or our top 16 friends that we would say these are our friends, right? So how many friends do we have? And then that kind of lets you know if you're going to be popular, because you can have some of the popular kids as your top 20 friends in MySpace. But guess what? If you didn't have any popular people on your top 20, people will say, well, this person might have a lot of friends, but they don't have the good ones. And then we get into number 2, and that's always being active on social media. We just talked about that, where we talked about having MySpace and then having a bunch of friends. And then, of course, now today, especially today, we have to post, we have to be active, we have to like, we have to engage. This is the new MTV. This is the new BET right here, social media. Because anything that's happening in the world is going to be front and center for us to see. The issue with teens today is that they're seeing front and center many of the things that are negative, that are going to have detrimental effects to their life if they partake in them. However, if you have strong parents, parents are going to be able to guide their kids, even if they have this negative influence of social media. Social media can be a great thing, but oftentimes we misuse it and it turns into a negative thing. And then you have the expectation of being really, really good at something, right? So if you're a football player, you're really, really good at football. If you are a musician, you're really, really good at an instrument. If you're a dancer, you're really, really good at dancing, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So we have the expectation that you have to be really, really good at something. I'm here to tell you that you don't have to be really good at something. You can just be good at things. You can be good at a plethora of things. You could be a jack of all trades. Yes, you can be good at something, but we do still have to understand that we have skills that we're going to be really good in. Like we have our strengths. So everyone has a strength, whether you know it or not. You have a strength. If you don't know your strength, I encourage you to take the Clifton Strength Finder test. And then from there, you're going to be able to figure out what your strengths are. It's a really good test. It is super accurate, and I recommend everyone who's looking to figure out their strengths to take that test and then understand where they shine. And then from there, implement a system into your life, into your career, how you make your top 5, top 10 shine. And then from there, you're going to see your whole life change and stop doing the things that don't matter. And then we look at, we have to always be doing something, right? We're always productive. We're always busy. Yes, you can be busy. Yes, you can just sit at home and do nothing. But if you are sitting at home, society is going to be looking at you kind of like, hey, like, what are you doing? Like, you should at least have a job. Another expectation, right? Because we want to know that, hey, that you're doing something that we were told when we were younger. We were also told to be in a relationship, right? So when you're a teen, you're like, boom, I got to be in a relationship. You're in a relationship, or you have to be happy all the time, or you have to do the standard route of education, right? That is what we were brought up into. So we are saying, well, you have to do this, and this is the next steps, because if you go to school, you're going to be going up the grades all the way up to grade 12, and then maybe even to college. And then from there, you're going to have multiple girlfriends or guy friends or whatever you have during the process. That's going to be, you have to be in a relationship. So you're looking for that relationship. And then you should be happy when you're in school. You should be happy when you're around people. You should be smiling. But if you're sad, they're like, what's wrong with you, right? Like, that is a negative thing. But yet we have emotions, and yet we're going to be sad and we're going to be happy at times. And then we have to make sure that we do things at certain ages. For example, when you're younger, you might do things like pee-wee soccer, pee-wee football. When you're older, you might do things like, college football, things like that. Yeah, of course, it's age appropriate, but you do the things that are appropriate to your age. Typically, you're not going to be going to Chuck E. Cheese when you're 25 years old. And if you are, I mean, God bless you, okay? Because you are just unaffected by what people are going to see. Because if you're just crawling through the tunnels with someone else's kids and you don't even have kids at that age, it's going to raise some red flags, I'm sure. And then people from Chuck E. Cheese are going to probably be talking to you, right? Now, moving on, of course, there's going to be the expectation of garb. That's going to be dressing, right? How do you dress? How do you look? From there, you're going to be looked at if you're dressing in a weird way. People who come from different countries who have different attire in their country is expected to wear that. However, if you visit another country with that same attire and garb, you're going to find that people are going to be looking at you like, oh, that's different. That's a different culture. All right. So that's where our expectation for culture comes. So wherever you are, you're going to have a different expectation. The last one we're going to be talking about for expectations on what society says is to have certain views because of your family or social background. So that means if you're middle class, poor, rich, for example. So if you're poor middle class, you probably might be growing up Democratic, and that's how you vote. And if you're wealthy, you're going to be voting Republican. Now, from that point, we get to make choices, right? We stay with our family, their ideals, what we were brought up in, or do we see where the world is going and we make adjustments? We're going to be breaking down that expectation just momentarily, but understand that our family views have an effect on our upbringing and our mindset. Now, sometimes you're going to get a outlier where one of your kids are just totally different than how you were raised to be, and you can even have that kid influence your other kids too. Because again, depending on their mindset, depending on how powerful their words are and their speech is going to create a turning effect where, yes, we can be what the family wants or what the family was, or we can start to go our own way. And I'm going to be talking about that. Then we get into what I'm really good at. And this is going to be the expectations for being a teacher. I had a list of 5 expectations in my classroom. It was something like, be kind, raise your hand. Don't talk when the teacher is talking, look forward, pay attention, no smartphones, like a list of rules, right? And even though they were very concise and we talked about them on the first day of school, right? So the first day of school, I'm sitting down every single class and I'm saying, these are the expectations. These are the guidelines for being in this room with me. And that's powerful. If a teacher doesn't do that, that teacher has not learned classroom management, because now at some point, the kids are going to start doing the wrong things. Let me remind you of the expectations, but you didn't even go over them. And that's what happens with work. And we're going to get to that in a minute. You have to go over those expectations. Here we have, like, for example, an assembly expectation. So this is when the whole school meets in the gym or in the auditorium. And they have 3 different areas, right? Be respectful, be responsible, and be safe. And that's going to be across the board. All the way down, it's always going to be respectful, be responsible, be safe. And in each area is going to have a different type of flow. Being respectful in the assembly means congratulating other students on awards nicely. Being responsible in that regard will be paying attention And then being safe, an example would be sitting correctly. However, if we go down a little bit and we look at classroom expectations, if we look at be respectful, use soft indoor voices. If we're being responsible, we're going to complete all assigned tasks. And then if we want to be safe, we're going to keep our hands and our feet and objects to ourselves. You probably might be looking at these or listening to these and you're going to say, whoa, I remember some of these. These are expectations. We have been taught these expectations all our life, growing up. Yet, when we finally go into the workforce, we don't have these expectations because we just think everyone knows. Well, how do we accept expectations for our bosses or for our employees and things like that? Your expectation as an employee to a boss might not be as potent as a boss's expectations to their employees. Because you might say, well, to my boss, I'm expecting you to pay me on time and I'm expecting you to treat me well and things like that. And I'm not saying you can't have those expectations, but that boss is not obligated to do those because the boss can let you go. All right. So now you're out of a job. So sometimes you have to conform to other people's expectations if you want to be in that environment, especially if it's an environment they created. So I work a lot with business owners, CEOs, affluent people, and I'm always talking to them about this area. Set expectations because they're over here telling me that their employees are not doing what they're supposed to be doing and everyone has a job and it takes them too long to do things. And heck, even in my business where I'm having a team and I'm running them, the expectations have to be there because if not, things fall through the cracks. Something is not posted correctly. Something is not shared at the right time. It's almost like, well, what are you doing? And I understand everyone has a life. I'm not here to say that you need to make my business your business. What I'm saying is, if you have a set of responsibilities, they have to be done. Handle your business. That's just the way it is. I have let more people go for them not doing the work than for them saying, oh, I'm a bad boss. Now, I don't believe I'm a bad boss. I believe I'm very strict and very firm. You know what you want, right? You create that expectation for people. And it's important that you create that expectation for everyone else, right? Because your employees are going to have expectations, but then you have to have expectations for your employees too. So some of the things that an employer should be doing with their employees is setting expectations. So that means that the employer should be setting expectations early and often, just how I said in teaching. The first day of school, I'm setting the expectations. I'm keeping these expectations attainable and realistic. I'm not going to say, I want you to do this and it's going to take a regular person maybe a year to do it. I want it done in a week. That's not realistic and that's not attainable. So I'm going to be upset at the person who wasn't able to do something that was going to be unrealistic. So as an employer, you do have to know that something is unrealistic. Now, if you know it's possible, you have people on your team that can do it, that person has to rise to the level. That's just the way it is. Then you want to make sure you follow the SMART goal framework. And the SMART goal framework is being specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and then, of course, time bound. And then from there, you can make sure that the jobs or the tasks that are going to be done is going to be to your standards. 4, you're going to connect expectations to clear metrics. So for example, this is how much we've grown, et cetera, et cetera. And then you're always going to want to review your employees' performance regularly. I typically like to meet with the team about every 2 weeks. And so I say, okay, well, tell me what's going on. And sometimes I meet with them every week if I see something is going wrong. So if something is going wrong and things are not going the way that I want them to, I'm going to say, well, we need to meet every week until we can fix this. And then sometimes I need to say, you know what, I'm going to put my foot down. I'm going to create a system for you. And then that system is going to be what you follow. Because I'm not going to keep repeating myself and wasting time, wasting crucial meeting time to talk to you about something that I already talked to you about. I don't have that flexibility to do that. So for me, understand that you can be so much more effective. How are you effective? You have to be clear on your expectations. And don't be afraid to collaborate with people. And don't be afraid to ask for help or some guidance if you need some help with expectations. Because a lot of people, they come to me and they need help on this area because they have a team, they have workers, they have employees. They have, relationships that they need some expectations for, but they don't have them. How do we create those? And as you can see, right, the expectations are so vast. And I think when people see expectations, it's almost like my expectations for society, my expectations for another individual. Yes, expectations are going to be so important to have, because if you don't have clear expectations, you're always going to find yourself on the other end, unhappy, unsatisfied, unfulfilled, because you just let people do what they want. Because if you don't have some semblance of structure, you're going to find that you don't know what you're building. Imagine if you are building a house, whatever you want to build, right? Just pretend you're building something. You get all the materials for building, and now you have all the wood, all the sheetrock, all the concrete, all the windows, all the doors, and they're all in a pile. And you get 10 people and you say, okay, build something. Are they going to build their own thing, or are they going to build what you wanted them to build? Most likely they're going to build their own thing because they don't have a blueprint. That blueprint is literally expectations. This is how it should be looking, because you don't really see people with a blueprint building something completely different. Like, oh, I don't even know how this happened, but it doesn't look anything like the blueprint. The expectation is the blueprint. The blueprint to you, your expectations lead you to the final result. Typically, the final result is something good. Most people want good in their life. Most people want something abundant. How do we get that? We have to be clear in our expectations, and society does a really good job at making you just, again, a follower, because we learn how to control ourselves and we learn how to be controlled in school, right? Sit down, be respectful, of course, being kind. I'm not saying that we don't want to be kind. That means keeping hands and feet to yourself, things like that in the hallway, keeping hands and feet to yourself, things like that. Raise your hand if you want to speak. It makes classroom management very simple, very simple. However, what happens in school carries on into our adult life. And of course, we have to learn how to be business people. We have to learn how to be cordial. We have to learn how to be in relationships. And all that stems from, of course, understanding those expectations in the past. However, now we are no longer confined by those expectations. So at some point, you need to define what your expectations are. You need to be very clear in what you want, because sometimes people don't even know what they want, so they just take what they get. So for example, people at work, they might say, well, I'm just going to accept whatever I get. Well, that's like going to a restaurant, sitting down, and they give you some food that you don't like. Or maybe you had the opportunity to order some food and they bring out something totally different. Sometimes you might hear someone saying, well, if you ordered that food, then why not tell them, and so they can bring you right food? And then the person's like, no, it's okay. I'll just eat this. That's the wrong mindset to be in. If something is broken, it's time to fix it. Just recently, I have an office now. So people, if they want to send me letters or if they want to come in person, things like that, they can come to the office, right? Now, with the office comes, people working at the office, and, there's a receptionist at the office, and, making sure everything is good. So whenever I'm booking a room for conferences, meetings, brainstorming, whatever it be, there's several rooms to choose from. So I chose a room that I wanted, and I said, this is the room that I want. When I get there, the receptionist says, well, we're switching things up a little bit, and I give you a different room than the one you requested. And I'm thinking in my head, why did you give me a different room than the one I requested? I know what I want. So then I had an opportunity to keep letting that happen, right? I could have said, oh, it's okay, don't worry about it. Or I can say, this is not going to happen again. That's what I did. So I said, okay, well, let's see the other room. And then, of course, the other room was occupied already. And I was like, all right, today is going to be the only day you get a pass. Now, I didn't say it like that. I said it more like, okay, I understand. Well, in the future, let's make sure the room that I book is the room I get. Okay? That's all I said. The look on her face was like defeat. I messed up. Of course. He booked the room and he didn't get the room. The expectations have to be there. I'm not mad at her. But at the same time, the expectations have to be there. We have expectations, but yet we don't relay it to people, and we don't put it in a manner where it's going to be definitive. That means if I'm defining what my expectations are, I'm saying that this is it. There's no other way. And it's not my way or the highway. It's just that this is the expectation. You're not going to want to have your kid in the house not listening to you, running around with a hammer, putting holes in walls because you don't know how to manage them. There's expectations. If you're upset, go to your room and go lay down or something. If you're upset, go outside and rake or go work out and hit the punching bag or something. Yet we just kind of say, well, don't do that. Don't do that. And there's no action. There's no action. When I'm training my dog, and I know this is a little bit different, there's expectations there too. When I say come, that dog better come. Now, if the dog doesn't come, there's consequences. Maybe there's no treat for them. Maybe now they're on a leash because I trained the dog to walk off leash right next to me. But if they don't listen, they need to know, well, I messed up. How do you do that? You don't have to hit them. You don't have to do that because you can be giving them negative reinforcement. And a dog sees it as, if you touch me, it's a good thing, even if it hurts, even if I feel bad. Dogs are going to seek attention, whether it be negative or positive. And people do the same thing. However, if you have clear, definitive expectations, then that's how you can set them up. And the best way you can set up expectations is to understand who needs those expectations, what areas of your life need those expectations, and then begin the process of setting up those expectations. For example, in a relationship, most relationships are monogamous. That means you're just going to have your one partner and that's it. An expectation in the relationship is that we're going to be loyal and we're going to respect each other. That's an expectation. It's also values, right? Being respectful and understanding the person's worth or values, things like that, right? And those are values also, right? Being respectful and being loyal. Yes, we have the expectations in our relationship. And then if you move in together, if you're married or something, or if you're maybe taking things up to the next level, the expectation for the house is we are not going to have dishes in the sink. We're going to make sure that our clothes are not just on the floor, they're in the hamper. We're going to be making sure that if you're going to be watching TV, you have it at an appropriate volume. So those are going to be expectations in the household. But you can create those expectations anywhere and everywhere. And I encourage you to set those expectations, whether it be with your parents, whether it be with your friends or your siblings, or it be with your employees or your coworkers at work. Set the expectations, because if you don't have expectations, people are going to just assume that you're okay with something. If someone gives you extra work at work and they're not your boss, they're not your manager or anything, they're creating in their mind, well, they're okay with it. But you need to lay down the law. You need to put your foot down. You need to say, well, guess what? I don't mind doing the work today, helping you out. I understand you're busy, but this is the last time. That's the expectation that I'm telling you to look for. If someone is borrowing money from you, borrowing money from you, it's the bad place to be. Okay? I encourage you not to let any money out. Now, if you want to be generous and give money away, that's cool. But you shouldn't just be giving money out. However, if you are one of the people who give money out, if you have those people in your life, and I encourage you that if you have people who are always asking for money in your life, throw them away. Toss them to the side. They don't need to be there. Surround yourself with people who don't need you. Because yes, I can find people to do my book deal, and I can have people fund my businesses or my business ventures, things like that. But guess what? I'm not over here saying, oh, I need $10,000 to do this or to do that. I'm making what I need. All right. So I look at myself and I say, okay, well, I need this much money. What do I need to do to get it? And I do it. Yeah, I know it's quicker to ask someone, but I would rather earn what I have. But then there's some people who don't want to do the work. There's some people who want that instant gratification. So if you have someone who's coming for you for money, what's your expectation in that? When are they supposed to give it back? How much are you allowed to give them? It just depends on you. It depends on your circumstance. If someone asks me for $20, I'll probably give them $5. Here you go, $5. I don't want it back. I don't care if I get it back because I'm thinking about, I gave that person $20. I'm just going to have that negative thing in my mind of this person just wants money. Now, once I give them that $5, there's no more money going that way. It's a one-time deal. And that person knows that too. That's the expectation. Because now at that point, it's like, oh, if I can't ask them for money, I burned that bridge, and good. You burn the bridges that are not leading you to the places you want to go. You built those bridges too. That other person didn't build that bridge by themselves. So if you don't like a relationship, the expectation is you get rid of that relationship. Now, if you want, you could talk about it. You can fix it together. But again, is it worth it? Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. If you're in a marriage that is full of love and communication and then you have a hiccup, I encourage you to fix that, right? That's the expectation of marriage, right? Till death do us part. That's the expectation. In sickness and health, in the lows and the highs, that's the expectation. Yet we don't have expectations. We operate on feelings now. I feel this way. I want to feel this way. Well, the expectation is not that. So sometimes you have to take responsibility to what you accept. If you accept a job, that employer is expecting you to do that job. And if you're not doing that job, then why should you be there in that work area, in that work environment? It doesn't work. You either show up or you don't. And if you're in a relationship, you're not being loyal and respectful and doing the things that were the expectations and the initial aspects of creating and cultivating the relationship, that's grounds for divorce. However, it doesn't even have to get to that. If you have two individuals who are clear and understand exactly what they need to be doing and understand that, yes, there are expectations, that just sets the guideline for everything going forward. When it comes to my marriage, walk in the park. Yes, we have our hiccups and things like that, but they're conversations. We communicate. When it comes to raising my kid, a walk in the park as a teacher, all these expectations, all of the stuff that I have been doing for my whole life, coaching people, a walk in the park. I have been doing it almost 15 years now. A walk in the park in all these areas, not because I'm automatically really good at it. It's because I make myself aware. I create the rules and the expectations that I want to follow, that I want to see through. And I make sure that every little aspect of any little thing is going to be exactly what it needs to be, rather than whatever is given to me. If someone gives me something that's half-assed, I'm going to let them know. If someone does something inappropriate to me, I'm going to let them know. I'm not a mean person. I'm firm on what I want. Are you firm on what you want? Do you have the expectations to let people know that this is where you are, this is where you stand? And it's not that you're defiant, it's not that you're stubborn. It's a difference between knowing what you want and knowing what you don't want. And I will tell you, there's a lot of people in the world that do not know what they want. So if you're a person who wants to learn and understand who you are, what type of expectations you should have in your life, I encourage you to go to revenconcepts.com, get yourself a free coaching session, and then begin to lay the foundation of the expectations in all the aspects and areas of your life. Because once you have those expectations there, the only thing you have to do is stay true to them, and then your true life is going to start to form. My name is Michael Rearden. I'm a mindset coach. If you have any questions, you can email me coachinginsession@gmail.com, and I will see everyone on the next episode of Coaching in Session. Until then, everyone, take care.